When England beat Italy 3-1 over the most recent international break, Harry Kane scored yet another brace. It takes Kane's tally of England goals up to 61, as the Bayern Munich man extends his lead at the top of England's all-time scoring charts, having only recently turned 30. The joint highest scorers in the Italy squad, by contrast, namely Nicolo Barella and Domenico Berardi, have scored a grand total of 16 goals between them, with 2 of Berardi's 8 strikes for the Azzurri having come just days earlier in a 4-0 thrashing of Malta. A lack of goals is starting to become a real problem for the Italy national team, who once produced some of the finest centre-forwards in the world. At the 1998 and 2002 World Cups, Italy's forward line could boast the likes of Alessandro Del Piero, Filippo Inzaghi, Christian Vieri, and Francesco Totti. When Italy won the World Cup for the 4th time in 2006, they had added Alberto Gilardino and Luca Toni to their attacking ranks, the latter of whom scored 33 goals for Fiorentina and won the European Golden Shoe that season. Before that, Italy bestowed the world with attacking royalty like Paolo Rossi, Gigi Riva, and Giuseppe Meazza. Few countries in football history can rival the Azzurri when it comes to strikers then. Yet now, Italy appear to be scraping the bottom of the barrel. Gianluca Scamacca, who started up front for Italy and scored against England, could only manage 3 goals in 16 Premier League games at West Ham United last season, and his tap-in against England was actually his first ever international goal from his 13th cap. Waiting in the wings were Giacomo Raspadori, who is Victor Osimhen's deputy at Napoli, and Moise Kean, a man who has struggled to live up to his early teenage potential and has scored just 37 career league goals in total at the age of 23. Ciro Immobile and Andrea Belotti, meanwhile, now appear to be past their best, having failed to replicate their club form on the international stage, even when they were in their prime. The situation has gotten so bad that Roberto Mancini, a man who once criticised Antonio Conte for calling up foreign-born players to the national team, pinned his hopes on Matteo Retegui in early 2023, a young Argentine who recently joined Genoa but was able to represent Italy through his grandparents. Heck, Mancini made forward Simone Profundi, Italy's youngest ever player, last November, when he brought the then 16-year-old on against Albania. A year on, Profundi is still yet to score his first ever goal in either club or international football, and he has made a grand total of just 10 senior appearances for Udinese. That is by no means a criticism of Profundi, he is, after all, only 17 years old still, but it is an indication of the depths that Italy are having to sink to in order to identify striking options, despite their illustrious past in the position, as is the fact that, in March, Mancini was reportedly mulling over handing a surprise call-up to 27-year-old Andrea Campano, a man who only made it as far as Serie D in Italy, the nation's 4th tier, was playing amateur football in San Marino as recently as 2020, and now plays for FC SB in Romania. So just what on earth is going on? How did a country that used to be able to bench Francesco Totti and Filippo Inzaghi end up wading through 16-year-olds and recent part-timers to plug the hole in their squad at centre-forward? Well, funnily enough, that's what this video is all about. So sit back, relax, and join me on a journey to the land of 4-time world champions who haven't even qualified for the last 2 World Cups, in large part due to a shocking dearth of attacking talent, as we attempt to figure out how such a curious shortage in a specific position has come about. It's important to begin by saying that having fewer options at centre-forward now than 20 or 30 years ago is a problem that is by no means exclusive to Italy. 2 years ago, almost to the very day in fact, I made a video about how centre-forwards are practically an endangered species and are at risk of going extinct. That is due to several factors. Whereas during the 1990s and 2000s, it was still typical for teams to play with 2 centre-forwards, or at least 1 out-and-out centre-forward, traditional strike partnerships are incredibly rare now, at least at the highest level. Teams want players, including forwards, who are involved in almost all phases of play and provide a team with much more than goals alone. Filippo Inzaghi, a legend of the Italian game, starred for Juventus, AC Milan and the Italian national team in 3 separate decades, scoring prolifically in all 3. In the more than 10 years since Inzaghi retired, though, there have been practically no poachers in a remotely similar mold to him who have made it at the highest level. Johan Cruyff once said of Inzaghi, quote, "Look, actually, he can't play football at all. He's just always in the right position." End quote. It was meant as a compliment, of sorts, but Inzaghi would never have fit into a Johan Cruyff team, and the world's best teams and best coaches would struggle to accommodate him now. It is hard to imagine Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp or Mikel Arteta making the necessary sacrifices to accommodate a Filippo Inzaghi region. Manchester City won the Premier League title in the 2020-21 and 2021-22 seasons without an out-and-out centre-forward, as Ilkay Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne respectively led their scoring charts. Meanwhile, Klopp's success at Anfield came with Roberto Firmino leading the Reds line, a man who was signed from Hoffenheim as an attacking midfielder and scored just 82 goals in 256 Premier League games during his 8 years on Merseyside, where he was routinely outscored by Liverpool's wide men Sadio Mane and Mohamed Salah. Inzaghi would almost certainly get into the Italy team due to a lack of competition, but even then, Italy manager Luciano Spalletti is another top manager who preferably would like a lot more from his forwards than goals alone. Ever since Spain won the Euros in 2012 without a recognised forward of any description, let alone an out-and-out centre-forward, but still romped to a 4-0 victory against Italy in the final, it feels as though there has been a mentality shift throughout the world game. Centre-forward is no longer the glory position that it once was, where every child grew up wanting to play their football. Following the era of Messi and Ronaldo, who started their careers on opposite flanks, and now moving into the age of Mbappe, Bellingham, Musiala, Pedri and Saka, most kids grow up wanting to play out wide or as a number 10, and there are few signs of that changing anytime soon. Erling Haaland is the most obvious exception, as probably the first truly world-class centre-forward that we have seen since the likes of Kane, Suarez and Lewandowski broke onto the scene, who are all now in their 30s. There was basically an entirely lost generation of great centre-forwards worldwide then, and whilst there is always a random element to something like that happening, in this instance, it was at least partly by design. Talented academy players who might have been funneled into playing up front in previous generations have either been allowed to or actively encouraged to play and develop elsewhere, and we see the impact across the board. England might be blessed with Harry Kane at this moment in time, but it would be disingenuous to suggest that their striking options haven't diminished in the modern era. During the 1990s, England's attacking options included the likes of Alan Shearer, Robbie Fowler, Teddy Sheringham, Ian Wright, Andy Cole, Emil Heskey, Stan Collymore, Les Ferdinand, Chris Sutton, Kevin Phillips, and so on and so forth. Andy Cole only won 15 caps for England, despite hitting 40-plus goals in a single season at Newcastle, spending several seasons as the main man in a ludicrously successful Manchester United team, and still standing now as the 4th highest goalscorer of the Premier League era, trailing only Alan Shearer, Harry Kane, and Wayne Rooney. Stan Collymore bagged 25 goals in a season for Nottingham Forest and set a British record transfer fee when he signed for Liverpool, but only ever won 3 caps for England. Such was the strength of England's striking options at the time. In the 2000s, England might still have had Wayne Rooney and Michael Owen, when fit, but already the depth had disappeared. Even at the height of the so-called golden generation, Darius Vassell was Sven's third choice behind those two. England have enjoyed something of a recent striker renaissance, but even the combined talents of Ivan Toney, Tammy Abraham, Ollie Watkins, Eddie Nketiah and Callum Wilson, serving in support of Harry Kane, still doesn't come close to the team's attacking prowess in almost any decade prior to the 2000s. The same is true of basically all of the world's leading national teams. France have gone from having Thierry Henry, David Trezeguet and Nicolas Anelka, all vying for a starting berth as their number 9 at Euro 2000, to a 37-year-old Olivier Giroud, Marcus Thuram, and Randall Kolo Muani now. Brazil were blessed with Ronaldo, Romario, Edmundo, and Babito in 1998, going to Richarlison, Gabriel Jesus, and Pedro at the most recent World Cup. Argentina, who won the World Cup in 2022, had Crespo, Caniggia and Batistuta in 2002, compared to Lautaro Martinez, Julian Alvarez, and Angel Correa in Qatar 20 years on. The closest team to Italy's demise of all, though, has been Germany. The nation that gave the world Miroslav Klose, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge and Gerd Müller seems to have forgotten how to produce anyone other than midfielders in recent years, forcing them to play either a 34-year-old Thomas Müller up front and out of position, or a 30-year-old Niklas Füllkrug, who only won his first cap shortly before the World Cup in 2022. Even within this important context, though, Italy's strife is unique, both in terms of its severity and the chronic nature of the condition. Due to the number of international games now, many of them against minnows, virtually every major football nation has had a new all-time record goalscorer over the past decade or so. England's is Harry Kane, set in 2023. France's is Giroud, set in 2022, though he is soon to be overtaken himself by a 24-year-old Kylian Mbappe. Brazil's is Neymar, also set in 2023. Argentina's is Messi, set in 2016. Portugal's is Cristiano Ronaldo, set in 2014. Belgium's is Lukaku. The Netherlands' is Van Persie. Spain's is David Villa. Uruguay's is Luis Suarez. And even Germany's is Miroslav Klose, also set in 2014. Italy's all-time leading goalscorer, by contrast, is still, after more than 50 years, Cagliari legend Gigi Riva, who scored 35 goals from 42 caps between 1965 and 1974. After him, Italy's next highest scorers are Giuseppe Meazza and Silvio Piola, who made their international debuts in the 1930s. There isn't a single player who made their international debuts during the last quarter of a century among Italy's all-time 10 highest goal scorers. And you have to go down as far as 17th to find a current player, Ciro Immobile, who has scored a relatively unremarkable 17 goals from 57 caps and may well already have played his last game for the national team. It is a striking set of statistics, even in an era of a diminishing number of world-class strikers worldwide, and the consequences for Italian football, and particularly the Italian national team, have been significant. In 2022 World Cup qualifying, Italy managed to create 178 shots on goal across 9 matches, which was among the highest number of any team from the UEFA qualifying bracket. From those 178 shots, though, and an XG of more than 20, Italy only managed to score 13 goals. Harry Kane and Memphis Depay, just for context, scored 12 goals apiece in that qualifying campaign on their own. Italy's highest scorers, meanwhile, were Moise Kean, Ciro Immobile, and right-back Giovanni Di Lorenzo, all tied on 2 goals. Italy were outscored in 2022 World Cup qualifying by Switzerland, who are hardly renowned for having an abundance of outstanding centre-forwards, but still managed to score 15 goals in order to qualify from their group ahead of them. Ultimately, it was a failure to score a single goal at home to North Macedonia in their Path C playoff tie, which saw Italy fail to qualify for the World Cup. And things haven't gotten any better since then. Italy have so far scored 11 goals in Euro 2024 qualifying, which is the same number as Ukraine, and currently leaves them 3 points behind the war-torn Eastern European nation, albeit with 1 game in hand. Italy's tally of 11 goals in this qualifying campaign is bettered by the likes of Scotland, Austria, Sweden, Slovenia, Denmark, Kazakhstan, Finland, Romania and Iceland, and it is matched by Albania. Even at Euro 2020, which Italy obviously won, sandwiched between 2 failed World Cup qualifying campaigns, none of their players scored more than 2 goals. What's more, this is not a new problem. We are now talking about more than a decade of Simone Zazas, Graziano Pellas, and Manolo Gabbiadini's. Things got so bad that Danny Osvaldo, another naturalised Italian and native Argentine, was being hailed as the second coming of Christ following 2 decent seasons at Roma. Osvaldo retired from football at the age of 30, having scored a grand total of 4 goals from 14 caps for Italy, to focus on his career in music instead. The likes of Osvaldo, Giuseppe Rossi, and certainly Mario Balotelli did at least have significant potential though, showing promise at one stage or another before failing to quite live up to expectations for a variety of different reasons. Mario Balotelli might be as mad as a box of frogs and has had a career of what-ifs, but he has still had the best tournament and goal-scoring record of any Italian centre-forward of the modern era. As frustrating as he might always have been, and a far cry from the Tottis, Vieris and Del Pieros of yesteryear, Italian football fans would give an arm and a leg just to have prime Mario Balotelli back in their 11, bullying backlines, just as he did at Euro 2016. Now things are worse than ever though. The 7 highest scorers in Serie A last season were all foreigners. 2 Nigerians, an Argentine, a Senegalese, Portuguese, French, and Angolan all outscored any Italians in the top flight of Italian football last season. Meanwhile, the 2 Italians in 8th, Domenico Berardi and Ciro Immobile, each with 12 goals, were tied with a Georgian, a Paraguayan, and another Argentine. It is the same story yet again this season, with only 1 Italian, Sassuolo's Domenico Berardi, currently among the league's top 5 goal scorers. The spike in foreign players starring in Serie A in recent years, which has come in for some backlash, is often attributed to Italy's growth decree. The growth decree is an economic incentive for employers to bring foreign workers to Italy, providing them with lower tax rates on eligible employees, in an effort to plug shortages, counteract Italy's worrying demographic pyramid in terms of ageing, and provide economic growth. There are several sectors where such an incentive may prove necessary and welcome, but it seems contentious at best to claim that football is one of them. As per the growth decree, for example, Inter Milan were able to sign Benjamin Pavard and Marcus Thuram with a reduced wage burden that if they had signed 2 Italian players on the same salaries last summer. Meanwhile, their city rivals AC Milan applied the growth decree when signing the likes of Christian Pulisic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and Tijani Reinders. Any of you who recall England's plight, particularly from 2008 to 2016, may recall that one of the things that was most often blamed for those struggles was the number of foreign players playing in the Premier League and a subsequent lack of opportunities afforded to homegrown players, thus stunting their development and depriving the national team of future stars, or at least talented squad players. In the end, England's fortunes turned around largely due to changes to academy coaching, and most of all just a radical increase in the sheer number of qualified coaches, without the number of foreign players in the Premier League ever being significantly reduced. Though the homegrown player rule, introduced as part of the 2011 Elite Player Performance Plan, was implemented in direct response to those concerns. Well, Italy is going through a similar inquest right now, with the percentage of foreign players in the country's top flight once again coming in for quite a lot of the blame. It now looks as though the growth decree will be scrapped for football, perhaps as soon as January 2024, though it may have to be a tapered withdrawal of the incentives so as to prevent teams from being loaded with sudden, unforeseen additional costs. When analysing the demise of the Italian national team, not just their centre-forwards, having gone from World Cup winners to successive failed qualifying campaigns in such a short period of time, a lot of people point to the downfall of Serie A. The undisputed best league in the world during the 1980s, 90s, and, at least at the start of the 2000s, the rise of the Premier League, the Big Two in La Liga, and the Calciopoli scandal and broader mismanagement soon put an end to all of that. Now Serie A has spent most of the last 15 years ranked as the 4th best league in Europe, as per UEFA's league coefficients, though it recently rose narrowly above the Bundesliga into 3rd, following Inter Milan's run to the final of last season's Champions League. Nonetheless, Serie A is nothing like the beast that it once was, and I think that is undoubtedly a factor in some of Italy's struggles in recent years. But even within that context, with a greatly weakened top flight, Italian strikers are still struggling to score goals in their own league system. Even in the Premier League, which has a higher percentage of foreign players than Serie A, albeit foreigners actually play slightly fewer minutes, though only very slightly, 4 of the league's 6 highest scorers last season were English, with Erling Haaland and Mohamed Salah the only exceptions. Harry Kane was 2nd, Ivan Toney 3rd, Callum Wilson 5th, Marcus Rashford 6th, and even after that, Ollie Watkins and Bukayo Saka were tied in 7th and 10th. To make matters worse still for Italy, there are few signs of things changing anytime soon. At under 21, 20 and 19 level, scoring goals and identifying top quality centre forwards, or at least high potential centre forwards, remains a struggle. The sole exception in Italy's youth ranks right now is Francesco Totti, who I feel uncomfortable even mentioning given the fact that he is only 15 years old. Totti scored 6 in 9 for Italy's under-15s, 3 in 7 for the under-16s, and 3 in 5 already for the under-17s, having jumped an age group ahead due to his talent. It would be remiss of me not to mention the AC Milan man in this context, given the excitement that already surrounds him, and in a discussion around a lack of strikers at youth team level. But the reality is that Kamada isn't so much an AC Milan man, he is an AC Milan boy, and trying to predict the future prospects of a 15-year-old is quite frankly a fool's errand. It wasn't long ago that Pietro Pellegrini, who made his Serie A debut with Genoa at the age of 15, was being talked about with similar excitement. Pellegrini was signed by Monaco in January 2018 for a reported €25 million, where he only managed to score 2 goals in 23 games over the next 3.5 years. He returned to Italy in 2022, joining Torino for €4 million, where he scored 2 goals in 18 league games last season, and Pellegrini's only cap for Italy came in 2020, aged 19. Pellegrini isn't the only one. Shortly before him, a lot of people were very excited about Lorenzo Luca, who enjoyed a breakout season with Palermo in Serie C as a teenager, but now plays for Udinese on loan from Pisa and is yet to make his Italy debut. And most notably of all, of course, Moise Kean, who had a sensational goal-scoring record for Italy at youth team level, and indeed for Juventus, prior to joining Everton. Ken struggled at Goodison Park though, and has only managed to score 14 goals in 87 games since returning to Juve in the summer of 2021. Aged 23, Ken has scored 4 goals from 14 caps for the Italian national team to date. There were comparisons, when Ken was coming through the youth ranks at Juve, with Mario Balotelli. Unfortunately, they may have been more prescient than a lot of people realised at the time. Ken is still young, and I wouldn't want to give the impression that I am writing him off. It's just that he hasn't developed as some imagine that he would have done by now, or at least as they hoped he would. And though Italian forwards have historically often peaked later in their careers, it would take a pretty significant turnaround for him to become a truly world-class centre-forward, capable of transforming Italy's fortunes up front anytime soon. There is an element in which, just as Italy's flurry of great centre-forwards over multiple generations begot future great strikers, the opposite is also true. Italy's great players for the past decade, Buffon, Chiellini, Pirlo, haven't been centre-forwards, meaning this current generation grew up idolising goalkeepers, defenders, and midfielders as their national heroes, not strikers. The same is true of the current team, and therefore the next generation that comes through. Italian youngsters right now will most likely grow up aspiring to be the next Federico Chiesa or Nicolo Barella, not the next Christian Vieri or Francesco Totti. It is a significant mentality shift, and, over time, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Italy, like Germany, now has an abundance of wide players and number 10s, some of whom are extremely gifted, but no one who quite knows how to consistently put the ball in the back of the net. So those are some of the reasons why Italy has gone from Francesco Totti to Gianluca Scamacca in a single generation, but of course, there are simpler explanations for the nation's attacking plight. According to Christian Vieri, who scored 23 goals in 49 games for the Azzurri, it is all the fault of video games. Speaking earlier this year, Vieri stated, when discussing former Italy manager Roberto Mancini, quote, "He won a Euros, even if he didn't qualify for the World Cup. He was missing a real 9. The reason? I think it's also a historical discussion. Times have changed. We only played football. Now kids have iPads, cell phones, video games." End quote. Vieri recently turned 50, which, must be the age at which humans are just hardwired to start blaming everything on video games. I will be generous to Vieri, who is a close friend of the channel and someone who I almost convinced to join Hull City in 2008, but seemingly unbeknownst to him, they also have iPads, cell phones and video games outside of Italy. So as an explanation for Italy's particular difficulties at centre forward, it comes up just a tad short. It also, it doesn't make any sense as to why iPads would lead to a particular shortage of centre forwards any more so than defenders or midfielders. But hey, all suggestions are welcome. The two most successful European national teams, Italy and Germany, are both wounded beasts, with particularly chronic issues in attack. Germany have qualified for Euro 2024 automatically as hosts, and that is probably a good job. There is a distinct lack of enthusiasm when it comes to the national team's prospects ahead of hosting the tournament, even following the appointment of Julian Nagelsmann. Germany's old foes Italy, who have an outstanding record against them, will still expect to join them there. Italy haven't failed to qualify for the Euro since 1992, when only 8 teams reached the finals. And it is all too easy to forget that they are the reigning champions looking to defend their crown. Nonetheless, Italy will still have to beat North Macedonia, something they failed to do 2 years ago, and then either draw or win against Ukraine to avoid yet another catastrophe. That shouldn't be in any doubt, but for Italy, the same question mark has persisted for the last 10 years now. Where are the goals going to come from? That is it for today's video, but thank you all very much as ever for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit the like button if that was the case. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And of course, make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for both this channel and my second channel, Alfie Potsama, both of which should be on or about to appear on your screens now, along with a couple of videos that you might fancy watching after this one. You can also find me on Twitter, Instagram, or Threads, though I haven't posted on Threads yet, but, you might want to be there for when I do, via the username at HITC Sevens on all three, and you can find all of the links that I just mentioned, plus a whole lot more, down in the video description below. Cheers.